So thank you for watching this video. This video is in lieu of the September 4th lecture. I apologize for the strange lighting. I'm making this video on a Monday evening, Labor Day, in my basement, and unfortunately didn't get the lighting figured out, but I need to leave for Washington tomorrow, and I do need to post a lecture for you guys, so here it is. I have worked pretty hard on the slides, and so I really hope you'll look at those carefully. There are probably more words in there than we normally would have. Usually the slides are around pictures and you're going to get the words in lecture. I tried to annotate the slides a bit more for this particular activity since I won't be there in person, although I of course am available on by telephone and email and text and whatever else if you have any follow-up questions. So let's get started. So tonight we're going to talk about the big enchilada, demand, supply, equilibrium, and how demand and supply interact. And we're basically going to start off with just this idea that we're going to be talking about this in the context of a competitive market. So a competitive market is a market with many suppliers, many customers. The main idea is that no one person, no one consumer, no one firm is big enough in the market to have much of an influence on the price. We're going to say that no one has any market power. And so everyone is just going to see the price as given and is then going to make a decision. The consumer will decide how much to purchase at that price, and the supplier, the producer, is going to decide how much to produce at that particular price. We're going to show within this model of the competitive market, there are 5 key elements. There's the demand curve, the supply curve. There are the set of factors that shift the demand curve and the supply curve. There's the market equilibrium, where supply and demand intersect. And then there's the way that the market equilibrium will change as either the supply curve or the demand curve shift, or both. So let's get into that right now. So first of all, let's talk about the demand curve. So demand, and this is one of those words where what you see in the paper is somewhat related to how we talk about it in this course, but is not exactly the same thing. So the demand is the amount of a good or service that consumers are willing to buy at a particular price. And as that price changes, the quantity demanded, the amount that a consumer is going to want to buy, is also going to change. And in general, almost every single time, if the price goes up, the quantity demanded is going to decrease. And if the price goes down, the quantity demanded is going to go up. And the reason I say it's slightly different from what you see in the newspapers or hear on the news or whatever, I shouldn't say every once in a while, all the time, you'll hear a person in a newspaper or on television saying, the price of the good rose and demand fell. No, that is not what happened. The price of the good rose, and the amount that consumers were willing to buy did decrease. But it decreased because we moved along the demand curve to a smaller quantity demanded. So let me explain that again. This is so important to this class. So demand is the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. So let's think of a particular good. Let's think about maybe gasoline, because that's a good that we think about all the time. And let's say I'm a person that drives a lot, but I have some control over my driving, and I'm going to change my behavior depending on the price of gasoline. So let's say the price of gasoline is amazingly $10 a gallon. So if it's $10 a gallon, I'm really going to try to only have to fill my tank once a week. So let's say my quantity demanded is going to be 20 gallons a week. Let's say I have a 20-gallon tank in my car. But if the price fell to $8, and that's still very high, right? Well, maybe I'd be willing to do a little extra driving, and maybe I would be willing to buy 22 gallons. So this is the price of gas, and this is the quantity of gasoline that I'm going to consume in a given week. And if the price were to fall to $6 a gallon, maybe I'd be willing to buy a little bit more. And if the price fell down to $4 a gallon, maybe a little bit more. And if the price fell to $3 a gallon, a little bit more. And if the price fell to $2 a gallon, maybe I'd be really willing to. I'd be driving a whole lot, twice as much as I would if the price rose all the way up to $10 a gallon. So this is a relationship between price and quantity, and we call this a demand schedule. And as I said, 99.99% of the time, the demand schedule is going to have this characteristic, that the price falling leads to an increase in the quantity demanded. But this is what demand is. And so I'll now give you one of the big unfortunate things that happened in economics. Alfred Marshall, who was actually mentioned in the article that you're going to be reading for homework 2, he came up with this whole supply to demand mechanism, and he, in his great textbook, put the quantity on the x-axis and the price on the y-axis, and we've been doing that ever since for 150 years. And it's kind of wrong, because generally, like if you've taken math, we generally think of y as a function of x, and like say if we had y equals x squared, we would have a function that looked like this. This is the 0, where for every particular x, we would know what y is. And the demand curve is the same way, except for sideways. For every price, we know what the quantity is going to be, and the demand curve is going to slope down. This would be the $10 and the 20 gallons, and down here would be the $2 and the 40 gallons. So as the price falls, the quantity increases. So you sort of got to think of it as its side. For every price, we know a particular quantity. So the demand curve slopes down. It is based on a demand schedule. And as the price rises, the quantity we demand decreases. As the price falls, the quantity demanded increases. We call that the law of demand. It is so certain that this is what's going to happen, we actually call it a law. Very few things in economics rise to the level of being the law of something. So the law of demand is something you can be pretty sure is going to happen. Every once in a while, as always happens in economics, is a little exception here or there. But in general, and when I say in general, I mean almost all the time, you can be pretty sure that demand curves slope down. And we're going to make this distinction between demand, which is the relationship between price and quantity, and quantity demanded, which is the quantity that we want to consume at a particular price. Now, demand can change as well. And when demand changes, we're going to represent that as a shift of the entire curve. So, one particular demand curve, we can see the price change, and the quantity is going to change as the price changes. Or something could happen to change demand. And if demand changes, the demand curve will shift. It could shift out, and we'll consider that an increase in demand from the previous demand, or perhaps it could shift in. Demand could fall. Something could happen to cause demand to decrease. And as I said, there are some slides that are a little bit better looking than what I'm putting up on the board that illustrate the increase in demand and the decrease in demand as the demand curve shifts. The important thing is we want to make this distinction between the change in quantity demanded, which has to do with the change in price moving us along the demand curve, and a shift in demand, which is something that moves the entire curve, saying that at any given price, say at $10 a gallon, we're willing to buy 30 gallons of gasoline, or maybe at $10 a gallon, we're only be willing to buy 10 gallons of gasoline. that at any given price, the quantity demanded is different than it was before, and that would be because of a shift of the demand curve. What would cause a demand curve to shift right or left? We're going to say there are 5 things. Changes in the prices of related goods, changes in income, changes in tastes or preferences, changes in expectations, and changes in the number of consumers. So number 1, changes in the prices of related goods. And you're going to hear me saying this over and over again during this semester. There are 2 kinds of related goods. 2, there we go. 2 kinds of related goods. There are substitutes and there are complements. So a substitute is a good that you could buy that good or you could buy something else that's close to it. So most people think of, say, apples and oranges as being substitutes. You walk into the grocery store wanting to buy some fruit, and you might buy the apple or you might buy the orange. And if the price of apples goes up, you're going to buy more oranges. The demand for oranges is going to increase if the price of apples increases. And if that is true, we're going to say those items are substitutes. And if the price of apples falls, of course, you're going to buy more apples because we're moving along the demand curve to a higher quantity of apples. But if the price of apples falls, we're also going to buy fewer oranges because they are substitutes. So if the price of apples falls, leads us to buy fewer oranges, it means that apples and oranges are substitutes. The other kind of related good is a complement. These are goods that go together. Coffee and cream, cars and tires, ice cream and cones, hot dogs and buns. I mean, things that you're going to buy both at the same time. And the hot dog bun is a very good example, where if the price of hot dogs goes down, we're going to buy more hot dogs because we're moving along the demand curve to a higher quantity of hot dogs. But then we're also going to buy more hot dog buns to put our hot dogs in. So the hot dog bun, if its demand increases because the price of something else fell, we're going to say those 2 goods are complements. And if the price of hot dogs skyrockets and suddenly we go to the grocery store and we can't afford hot dogs anymore, we're not going to buy any buns either. So if the if the demand for buns decreases because of an increase in the price of hot dogs, we're going to say that hot dogs and buns are complements. So a change in the price of related goods is going to shift the demand curve for the good of interest. Next one is the change of income. Well, that one is easy. If you have more money, you're probably going to buy more stuff. And if you have less money, you're probably going to buy less stuff. I say probably. Most goods, if you have more money, you're going to buy more of them. And if you have less money, you're going to buy less of them. That's most goods. We're going to call those goods normal goods. Most goods are normal goods. Most goods are things you like to buy, and if your income goes up, you're going to buy more of them. However, there are some goods that actually behave in the opposite direction. I had this nice big job at a bank in downtown Hartford years ago. I worked, it was called Fleet Financial Group. It was at 777 Main Street. It's now an apartment building, by the way, across from the old State House. But I was up on the 16th floor. I was overlooking the old State House and the Connecticut River. I was on the east side. My title was Vice President and Senior Economist. I had an expense account, very nice office, very nice salary. And I ate out lunch all the time. Then tragedy struck. The bank merged, and I got laid off. And my income plummeted. And suddenly I'm eating a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and this is not a joke. So I consumed a lot more peanut butter and jelly after my income fell. So if your income falls and you consume more of a good, we're going to call that an inferior good. So an inferior good is a good where when your income falls, you consume more of it, and when your income rises, you consume less of it. While most goods are normal goods, which are goods where you increase your consumption when your income goes up and you decrease your consumption when your income goes down. So change in income, though, will shift the demand curve.